On the line with us is Oregon Senator Ron Wyden, one of my two senators, and I'm so glad he is. Wyden.senate.gov is the website. You can tweet him at Ron Wyden, W-Y-D-E-N. And Senator, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tom, great. And I also like the news that you're back in Portland to stay.
Yeah, well, we're loving it. All three of our kids are here, grandkids, everything. So it's perfect. So you have done some extraordinary research. You pried 4,000 pages of documents out of the NRA. Strange goings on. Tell us about this. What did you learn about the connection between the NRA, the Republican Party, and Russia?
Well, this really focused, and we had the finance staff, I'm the ranking Democrat in the Senate Finance Committee, really digging into this, and it really focused on the run-up to the 2016 election. And I think when you unpack it all, I think there are real questions about whether the NRA leaders may have violated tax laws, because the tax laws prohibit organizational resources being used for personal gain. And in effect, the National Rifle Association pretty much came off as a foreign asset for Russia in the run-up to the election.
Huh. Specifically how?
Well, what they did, and it was very clever, they worked to provide access to the American political system, these NRA insiders, the people at the very top of the organization, figured out a way to provide access to our political system to basically advance their personal business interests. That's really what this was all about. And of course, they aren't willing to hand over checks and that kind of thing, but we basically were able to assemble the documentation, making it very clear that what this was really all about was growing evidence of rampant self-dealing and essentially abusing the organization's tax-exempt status.
Now, I remember back in the fall of 2010 when the Citizens United decision came down, and in fact, I even think you and I talked about this on the air. John Paul Stevens, in his dissent, said that under some of the logic that was presented in this Citizens United decision, that Tokyo Rose, and that was the example he used in the dissent, that Tokyo Rose would have been able to fund American politicians and participate in the American political process. To what extent is that sort of, kicking the door open to corruption that the Supreme Court did in that case? Has that facilitated the NRA, and to what extent might it provide them with a loophole or an escape hatch here?
Well, I just think that Citizens United is one of the great abominations in terms of judicial kind of policy. I mean, the basic proposition of Citizens United is that the rich person's checkbook is exactly the same thing as the poor person shouting on the street corner, that this is all content and it's all protected by the First Amendment. That's absurd, because the person shouting on the street corner doesn't get anywhere near the visibility that the rich person gets with their checkbook. And you bet Citizens United really opened the door to all kinds of games that can be played by foreign interests.
Yeah. So what's next with regard to tracking down the NRA and their connections to foreign governments? And are they doing this or did they do this with any governments other than Russia?
Well, what's next is following up with the IRS so they can do their job to see if the documents that we have presented demonstrate what we think is certainly calling into question the NRA's tax-exempt status. And certainly there are going to be conservatives who are going to say, oh, my goodness, we can't touch their tax-exempt status. But tax-exempt laws are supposed to be for protecting the kinds of considerations that go into public policy and get you a tax exemption, not used for your personal benefit. And that's what I think the IRS needs to do, is to investigate the publicly reported activities of the NRA, leaders. They need to investigate the 2015 trip that was taken to Russia, which they have denied. The NRA has denied that it was an official trip, and the NRA paid expenses and the like, and we came up with a lot of documentation making it clear it was a official trip. So the NRA wasn't straight about that either.
Fascinating. Keep us up to date on that. This is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. In the meantime, we're in the midst of this impeachment drama, and I'm not sure if drama is the exact right word, but it certainly seems like there's plenty of that coming out of D.C. right now. What's your take on the whole situation and where we're going with it?
This is far and away the most troubling aspect of the Trump administration as it relates to conflicts and abuse of power. For example, if you look at the Mueller investigation, we were always dealing with 6 degrees of separation. In other words, you would have one Trump campaign official talking to another campaign official talking to another one, talking to a fourth. Now you have no buffers. You just have one president, Donald Trump, talking to the Ukrainian president. No buffers, and it's very clear Donald Trump is engaged in what I think almost everybody would regard as an abuse of power. He was asking another foreign leader to help him in the 2020 election, to, in effect, gather information that would have another government helping Donald Trump in an election.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Now, are you part of a Whistleblower Caucus? Do I have that right?
Yes, I'm the co-chair of the United States Senate Whistleblower Caucus, and I've made it a special priority to focus on protecting the rights of whistleblowers. And, of course, that has come front and center in this debate as well. The president denying this person whistleblower, this kind of thing. I think, clearly what this whistleblower has done is very credible. First of all, it tracks the transcript. So I think already you're starting with a situation where what he's saying, and he's talking about leaders, a number of leaders who talked with him about the points that he was making. And I think there are gaps in the whistleblower law that are going to come to light as a result of this. There are reverberations all through the whistleblower community right now, with a lot of whistleblowers really frightened about their ability to speak truth to power. And my sense is we're going to need to we're going to have to strengthen this law, and I'll be very much involved in that as co-chair of the Whistleblower Caucus.
Yeah, Ed Snowden has written a book, and apparently I haven't read it, but apparently one of the main points he makes is that he didn't trust the whistleblower process, that he had seen people get eaten up and spit out or simply fired or dismissed or whatever. And he was quite certain that if he went through that process, his stuff would never go anywhere, and which is why he did what he did, and he ended up in Russia. We now have a credible whistleblower who literally dotted every I and crossed every T. And yesterday, the President of the United States called for his execution, which has got to have a chilling effect on whistleblowers and on anybody who might think about talking to whistleblowers. It seems to me like we've got a real problem with our whistleblower laws.
There is no question, Tom, that the whistleblower statute is going to need to be strengthened. I can't get into classified issues since I'm on the Senate Intelligence Committee, but I think the law needs to be strengthened, and I think also there has certainly been, over the last week or 10 days, a return to what a lot of whistleblowers feel is a culture of intimidation. That's the way it has been for so many years. When we do manage to get the laws strengthened, we got some changes in the recent intelligence authorization bill, but I'm telling you, without going into classified matters, the laws are going to have to be strengthened.